Hello and welcome. Today we are taking a look at the East German Wieger, I don't know, the STG 940 magazine. There are three things that I want to accomplish today. One, I want to test this magazine in my current crop of 5.56 AKs. Secondly, I want to talk about the history of this magazine and where exactly it came from. And thirdly, I want to compare it to the Romanian copy and point out the actual differences between the two so that you know which one you're looking at. Starting with, how did this do in my 5.56 AKs? So the barrel, it does not fit in at all. It is too fat to fit in the mag well. And as far as the ZPAPs, it did fit and they did feed. As you can see here in this poorly framed video that I got at a public range. I'm not the biggest fan of public ranges, but they are useful when you need them. But yeah, this magazine did work for me in my ZPAP 85, though it's very tight and it's very difficult to remove. It's getting better as it wears in, and I think part of the reason it's the way that it is because this particular one was basically new old stock. Oh, and for what it's worth, in my M90 here, man, if that isn't difficult. Yeah. So yeah, my M90 did not like this magazine. The magazines themselves are more expensive than the factory Serbian mags, which are kind of objectively better for this pattern of AK. So if you don't have any of these and you don't find them for dirt cheap and they're already kind of worn in, I wouldn't bother getting them, honestly, because having to modify them and having to deal with the fact that they're on the edge of tolerances. If you want metal mags, get the factory Serbian. That being said, let's talk about the history of this magazine. Now, this magazine was made by the East Germans in the very late 80s. And the question is, why were they making a 5.56 AK in the late 80s? And the answer is exports. They did manage to sell a few thousand to Peru and to India, but then the German unification happened and that entire program got scrapped and all of the remaining rifles were destroyed. But the magazines were not, so those kind of kicked around for a little while. These magazines were a good template that actually the Romanians used, and so they made their own version, which they used in their SAR 3, the Wasser 3, the Champion, which is a 5.56 Draco, but they basically copied the East German STG 940 magazine. So there's not much difference between the two, but there are definitely differences. And the main, most striking difference is very simply the center rib. On the body of the magazine itself, the East German center rib goes almost all the way down to the floor plate, whereas the Romanian does not. It stops about a ½ inch short. That's the most clear example of the differences between the two. Beyond that, there are more subtle differences, such as the drain hole on the Romanian being much larger. The spot welds on the spine and the front of the mag are much more visible on the East German, and overall the machining on the East German just exhibits more quality, as one would probably expect, because they may have been communists, but by God, they were German communists. The East German front locking lug is a bit wider than the Romanian. They have the exact same style of locking on the floor plate, as you can see here. They're very similar and functionally basically the same mags. Geometrically, as far as the actual dimensions, they're very, very similar magazines. So don't pay East German prices for Romanians and know what you're getting. All right, and that is way too much information about the East German STG 940 Wieger, I'm gonna go with, magazine. These are really interesting mags. They're still floating around. I don't see many of them on the primary market anymore, but they're out there. If a magazine has more historical significance or more of a historical story, I hope to convey that to you guys, rather than just being like, oh look, it fits and it might work sometimes. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and let me know if you have any questions or if I got anything wrong, but otherwise I will see you guys next time.